Hi, I'm Jim Clark, Visual Arts Manager here at Hopkins Center for the Arts. Today we're speaking with David Strom about his exhibition, Drawing to Painting, May I Have This Dance, on view now through October 21st, 2023. David, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jim. Right out of the gate, I want to thank the Hopkins Center for the Arts. I mean, I think having a facility like this in your community to present the art is absolutely marvelous, and thank all the people who thought of the idea and supported it and have brought it about. I see my work up on this wall, and years ago I sold a painting to a lady, and she lived in a really nice house, and she asked me if I thought my painting would look nice on that wall. My response on my inner voice was, a fly speck would look good on this wall. That's how I feel about this wall. You know, I mean, it's a beautiful space, and I'm very thankful to the Hopkins Art Center, their members and staff for, in a sense, taking a chance on me because, you know, prior to the submission, you know, I don't think I had an in, but anyway, thank you.
Thank you. And I should mention, you're not just exhibiting here, you're also a member artist and have
Yes.
a piece in our fall juried exhibition as well. So thank you for your support.
Well, thank you for all you do for the artists and arts, and the arts are so important in our culture. You know, it's how we keep track of where we've been, what we've done. It's what's remembered. You know, we look back to medieval times or way back, and that the arts are the record of our history in a lot of instances.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. The theme of this exhibition, this body of work, the series, is pairs of drawings and paintings, and the title being May I Have This Dance. And in your exhibition didactic, we've included a piece at your request of Andy Warhol's. Can you tell us about the inspiration and how it relates to that work?
To Andy's work?
Yeah, yeah.
I claim that for a grave cover, I would like a piece of granite or stone with those dance steps etched in it so that people can come and dance on my grave. That's how that relates. Drawing to painting, may I have this dance? I love to dance. The drawings were done during COVID, and they were done with, I brought these along just to kind of show you. The drawings are done with pens like this, and oh, that's just part of the pen that fell off, and a bottle of ink. So that's what these are. So you kind of get a sense. These are comprised of little vignettes. I live in southwestern Minnesota, and we drive around a lot, and these are different things that you will see in the landscape there. I received a grant to turn the painting, or the drawings rather, into paintings, and they're not an exact copy by any means, but an interpretation of what the drawing was. And I had a whole lot of fun with what happened with the color. You know, I enjoy color a lot. Another thing that's different between the two is with the drawing, I don't have an ink eraser. So a mark made is a mark made. I can't change it. The paintings are basically just the opposite. If I put down a layer of paint, I'm going to put another layer of paint on it. I'm going to put another layer of paint on that. I've never worked from a drawing before, and I don't do preliminary drawings for the paintings. You know, I mean, it's not like I have this all sketched out.
David, do you do preliminary drawings for the drawings? Because these are enormous drawings.
No.
Really?
Yeah. What my method or technique is with dry brush acrylic, I made a series of boxes. And then within those boxes, with dry brush acrylic, or sometimes even just with pen, I'll make images within those boxes and then play within those boxes.
As you're constructing the image, do you have, since you don't have a preliminary drawing to rely on, do you have a sense, a pre-visualization, or are you treating each frame or what is the word that I'm looking for? Panel. You'd think I'd know something about comic books. In each panel, are you approaching it individually, and then responding after you've done that one? I mean, how does this come to be?
Jim, I'm glad you asked. The vignettes allow me to play.
Yeah.
I don't have a preconceived idea. Actually, why I'm still doing this 50 years later is because I want to see how the darn thing turns out.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm working away and, oh, that's okay. And then what does that call for? You know, so I try to respond within the drawing of, you know, what's happened here and how that carries through. And then let me just skip a little. There are, not so much in this one, in some of them there's a line or a chord that goes through. So I didn't know what that chord was. So I like to read, and I listen to a lot of music while I'm painting and drawing vinyl. So about 20 minutes, turn it over and go back, and it's about the right time frame for me. But anyway, in reading, all of a sudden, click, I'm reading about Ariadne and Theophis. And Ariadne is the young lady who gave Theophis a cord so that when he went into the labyrinth to slay the Minotaur, he could follow the cord back out rather than never being heard from again. So after I had done the drawing, I figured out through reading what the cord was. So it didn't start out as I'm going to make this cord so I can go in and come back out, but I made the cord so I could go in and come back out, and then I found out what it was.
Mm-hmm. The works that incorporate the cord, do they start with the cord, or does the cord come about afterward? I mean, do you find the chord after you've already become lost? I guess is the way to put that question.
I like the music, and I think it's a C major chord.
Yeah. That's great.
On some of the drawings that I've done that aren't here, I will leave spaces in some of these and then work the chord so the chord goes over and falls back underneath.
Sure. Process-wise, are you hopping around from panel to panel as you create this, or is it essentially, clockwise?
Typically on the drawings like this, I'll do the whole drawing, but then when I start seriously inking, because of, I don't want to be rubbing my arm on this all the time, so I'll usually start towards the top and work my way down. The dry brush drawing was done vertically, and then it was laid on a table, and then I started with the pen and ink to come back on that.
You shared images of your home studio with us, which I quite envy. And it's clear that you've been working at this for a long time, because there are images of your storage. The stylistic approach and the content of it, how long have you been working in this pool?
I started playing in probably about 6th grade, where I had a friend whose name was Art, who I would do his art projects if he would do my history projects for me. So I knew that art was going to pay off.
Yeah.
So I knew that I loved art, and I would start, we live in Windham, 2 hours south of here, and I would hitchhike up to Minneapolis and go to the art school, Minneapolis School of Art at the time, now it's MCAD, and I would hang around in the student lounge and talk to all the long-haired hippies and just have a good time. And then Saturday night, I'd walk down to the Guthrie, and I happened to catch Janis Joplin and Mose Allison, and anyway, it was a lot of fun. Part of the whole process, for me, the journey, the quest, has been the people that I get to meet. You know, I mean, I've got to meet you. We've met a lot of other artists. We've met a lot of people who are interested in the arts. So it's been real important that way.
Subject matter wise, we have fields, there are windmills that appear, some rolling hills, and the grain bins.
Okay.
And that subject matter, I know from reading and speaking with you, that it relates to your local landscape. Have you always been inspired by, or I will say obsessed, and I say it in the best possible way, because I think artists, we become obsessed with certain subject matter. Is it fair to say? And has it always been a preoccupation, if not an obsession?
Well, actually, I came about the imagery backwards. After I left art school, I had a quart of ink and I started doing drawings, and all of a sudden in these drawings, one of them turned out to look like a jungle. And actually it was two virgins at the altar. And it was just screaming jungle to me. And I had a little roadside market with all these plants, you know, like we have around us here. So I started drawing them, and then I started drawing the people who were there. But anyway, so I was drawing jungle, what I call jungle images, and I use poor man's encaustic, which is shave your color crayons and get out a Burns-O-Matic and go. So I melted the crayons onto the drawings. Then, fortunately or unfortunately, I thought to myself, I'm a trained, serious artist. I have a degree, so I better do something trained and serious. So I started thinking about what an artist does, and I think one thing that an artist does or can do is help us to, or allow us to see what's around us in a little different light. So I started looking at the jungle huts, which are a triangle over a rectangle, and then I started looking at the gray steel grain bins that are surrounding me. Every farm place has a set of gray steel grain bins. If you're familiar with Giorgio Morandi, he made a whole career out of painting bottles on a table. I see the landscape with the grain bins as my bottles on a table, so to speak. So I came about the imagery kind of backwards. And then I started pursuing the shape of the triangle over the rectangle. Some of them were more elaborate than others. So that's, and then the wind turbines we have a couple of wind farms in our area, so they're very prevalent, you know, and you don't realize how large they are until you see somebody in a pickup truck at the base working on it, and you're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
What else is in here? Oh, I kind of trace around the lines a little bit. That's sort of the early Frank Stella pieces where he did the parallel lines, the black paintings and the aluminum paintings. So I sort of like that.
The grain bins remind me in form, in some to a degree in content, to Monet's haystacks, in that those were another source of preoccupation or obsession, and a constant to kind of study light and shadow. Do you see any connection between the grain bins and the haystacks? Or?
I've seen the haystack paintings and admire them greatly. And but I think I'm doing something different. I mean, the shape is the same.
Yeah.
But I'm not. Mine are mostly flat. You know, I realize that I'm working on a two-dimensional surface, and typically I'm not trying to fool anybody. You know, I mean, a lot of times you'll look at paintings and they're wonderful. I mean, that's the thing that's nice about art, is everybody approaches it differently. You know, I mean, some people will make a very realistic landscape. I know I can't do that, or I choose not to do that. Or an impressionistic landscape. There are people who do that much better. I'm searching, trying to figure out what's going on with me and my surroundings. Also, to address that, I live in the house that my wife grew up in. My studio is just across the highway from the house that I grew up in. We had our store in the building that my parents had their grocery store in. For 39 years, my wife Marilee and I had a flower and card shop. So I was able to deal with some of those urges through flowers. You know, I mean, I would do flowers, and that's not a bad gig.
In that, what is the art community like in the Windham area? Did you have community, or have you felt a sense of? I think city folk might look at Windham and say, well, he maybe feels isolated as an artist, but that's based on assumptions.
Well, I see that as kind of a wonderful thing, because you have to rely on yourself to entertain yourself. And these are what entertain me. Whereas if I was going to all these different things, or I've been fairly isolated. There are people in the area that are interested in the arts, and but we have to travel a bit.
Sure.
And that's where, you know, the kind of on the road again sort of thing comes in. And that's, I think subconsciously, that's where a lot of these images come in.
Do you, and maybe this might be a terrible question, and the answer quite obvious, but do you think you would make the same body of work had you, say, stayed in Minneapolis? Or we know, you haven't spoken of it, but we had discussed it. You had been accepted to Cooper Union in New York City, and ended up electing to go to the Minneapolis School of Art, now MCAD. Had you stayed in the Twin Cities area, would this have been the work?
No, and I think that's a really good question, or a really good point to make. You know, I mean, my work is in a lot of ways dependent on that stability, that landscape that I've known since I was, you know, a 4 or 5-year-old kid. You know, so I have a depth that way. No, the work would be entirely different. In fact, I thought about that several times. I mean, if I had grown up in Philadelphia, it would be entirely different, or anywhere else.
But you grew up in this environment, and it might have been maybe that it came out in your work, but it was looking back. And when as you've been making this, you've been living in it. So it is a reflection of lived experience in a contemporary sense.
Yeah, in that specific location.
Yeah.
Whereas if I lived here, it would be a different,
Backward looking.
different body of work.
Sure.
You know, because I would be looking at construction and cranes and buses and all the fun stuff you have.
In the images from your studio, you have a number of, it looks like grain bin maquettes or sculptures. So can you tell us a bit about, do you use those to draw from, or are they more fun inspiration to have around you?
Fun inspiration, and typically what I've done a couple times, first of all, I found my first grain bins at Al's Farm Toys in the Mall of America, which I find kind of what is it?
Discombobulating.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when I have an exhibit, I'll set out a whole table of these toys for kids to play with and move around and see. I don't draw from them, no. I think I just make up things.
Yeah. Have you always made up things? When you were doing art projects in exchange for the history work, what type of work was that?
I got to tell you the truth. Sometimes I lie. I was fortunate. I had a mentor who had gone to the Minneapolis School of Art, and he graduated, I think, in 1932. And he did abstract collages, and he was very brave in his color and his materials. He would take cardboard and take it apart and glue it onto a surface and tie-dye stuff, and I would take things up to him, and he was always, "Oh, David, that's very colorful, that's very brave," and encourage me to be much looser than what this is.
When they're paired like this, in your mind, do you have a notion of how you would hope that the viewer engages with each pair? I mean, are they comparing the two, or are you hoping that they have a favorite between the two? Do you have a favorite between the drawings and the paintings?
So that goes back to reading.
Yeah.
So I was doing these, and then I started reading about the viewer interacting with art. So, and that's part of what the statement entails. So what I would hope is when the viewer starts looking at them and bouncing back and forth, it's a three-way dance. So the viewer is dancing with the painting and with the drawing. They're pulling them together. And they're seeing that, yeah, these are upside down, but they don't really, they realize that it's the same sort of theme and images, but it's not. They've changed. Also, I paint sort of one color at a time, so I get out my metallic bronze paint and paint, then I get out my blue paint and I paint, and so the paintings are layer after layer.
Is this series ongoing? Are you working on it now?
I think this series is pretty complete at this point. I'm thinking about going back to some old paintings and making drawings of them.
Reverse.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I just, yeah.
What are you working on right now?
Plat maps. But they're not maps, but they're plat maps. And this sort of has, so anything you see in these that is a square, where we live, it's basically flat farmland, and there's a road every mile. And a township is 36 square miles. So I started playing with that, and then I started using a square mile is called a section, and a section typically is, you'll have a farmer who owns half the section and somebody who owns a quarter section. So I play with dividing those. With the work, I'm not smart enough to figure it out, but I like to play with what we put on the land would be the grain bins, the wind turbines. These are, in my mind, round bales, which are, there are a lot of them out there right now, that sort of stuff. But then to take it to the next step, where a plat map or a map is how we intellectualize the landscape. It's an abstract
Projection.
idea of the landscape rather than the landscape.
Yeah, and you have an example.
I brought along a plat book, which actually, this is what the drawing in the members' juried show is based on.
Okay.
So I'll take this and kind of copy out. Sort of copy, sort of make it up.
How did you arrive at that as an inspiration? Have you always been interested in maps, or was there a lightning bolt aha moment? Was it sneaky?
I don't remember. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Where did you get that one?
That one actually was my grandparents for Jackson County. They had a little farm there.
Could you use a plat book from Tortilla Flats, California?
I could, but it would be entirely different because I suspect that, well, yes and no. I presume that Tortilla Flats would have a lot more curves than southwestern Minnesota. Although, if you look at Manhattan, it's a grid. There are long blocks and short blocks and up and down. So, yes and no. And another thing that's sort of caused me to slow down a bit and doubt myself has been looking at Google Maps on the phone. So I'll bring up, this section with the lake on it, and I can see that, there are actually trees over here, and there's a road that goes through, and so there's just a wealth of information that, I'm making drawings and paintings. I'm not making maps.
But it seems like your interest is hyper-local. I mean, it is your community, but you're not against maybe, possibly, using maps from another place.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been there so long.
Yeah. But it seems that it's still paying dividends. You're still seeing things fresh in your
I hope so.
Local environment.
Yeah, and what's the saying? Some people can go around the world and not see anything, and other people can walk around the block and see the world. Something like that. So, I hope I'm forever inquisitive, and the carrot is, forever out there. My mentor, the gentleman I was telling you about who did the collages, he was 95 when he passed. He was a leap year baby. We went to New York with him when he was in his late 80s, and we went to Area Discotheque, and he was dancing with the gals, and Marilee and I were sitting on the sidelines drinking grapefruit juice, and afterwards he was really upset that he didn't get the telephone number of the gal from the class of 54 that he was dancing with. Always stay young. I mean, I know it's a state of mind, but it's important to try to look at things fresh. And the other thing, it's a painting. It's really not precious. So I can come and make a mark across this and...
Could you please just keep a little bit more?
I'm waiting for the day when they post a guard. We saw the Pollock painting in Sioux City that is in Iowa City that, I don't know, some rich person had. Anyway, they had 2 people in the room, guards, at all times. We didn't get near it, but it was a nice painting.
We usually do.
Yeah.
We gave them a day off. So.
I know, and I gave my pilot the week off.
My pilot is here.
Oh, well. Is this a pilot program?
We're really going off the rails. That's a perfect segue to open it up to Q&A.
So, fascinating work.
Thank you.
And I felt when I was viewing it that I was actually more in a square dance than a trio, because
Okay.
I felt those two and I felt you and I in the same presence. So that was a cool thing.
Okay, good.
First question that pops to mind is you pointed to one of the panels over there and you said, so I look at this lake on Google Maps, and I know that there's trees over here and whatnot, and it makes me ask the question, can you look at every one of these panels and know the exact actual location that is contained therein? Is that part of your practice?
Not on these pieces, no.
Okay.
The one that's in the other room in the members juried show, is based on, I think, like a 1972 plat map. So people who owned a half section, there's half section, quarter section in those specific townships. And then I did one that's like that, except I took the names of the people who owned the land and wrote it down on the painting. So
Fun.
it's, yeah, fun.
On the paintings, what is the medium?
Acrylic paint.
Is
Yeah,
acrylic.
Yeah.
And when I compare the two, the ink drawing and the painting is, what's the word? Is it like a little bit looser, perhaps?
Yeah, yep.
So you're not following exactly.
No.
So what's the inspiration then? So that you've got this, it's very specific, and then it's a little bit looser. Do you just go to each box and then just decide, this is what I feel, and you paint it, or you're not dictated by what you've drawn in the?
It's a jumping off point, a diving board. So I'm diving into this, and like in this one,
Yes.
stupid little things are like ta-das for me. So I figured out that I could cut out a piece of cardboard and just paint up to the edges and have a silhouette of a bin. So that's a big thing to me. And in some of the others, I've got some little circles where the light comes through and that sort of stuff.
Like, for instance, the lower portion, the lower left, and then this one, you've got like probably some pine trees, and you've got your through line going through, but it's missing down here. So what inspired you to do that? Is that a lake, perhaps? I know, it's really kind of silly question.
No,
Not
it's,
at
it's,
all.
it's not a silly question, but it leads me to my wonderful quote from Georges Braque. It's the interesting part of art is the part that we can't explain, or the most something to that effect. And I can't tell you why, and I can't tell you what it is. I mean, sometimes I start to do that, and then I just kind of bite my tongue. I shouldn't. I think.
I just have to say, I love the freedom of that you've done this, and it's very specific, and then the freedom in this, where you just let your mind go in your hand, and however you're inspired by that. I think
Well,
it's
and
wonderful.
when I'm working, when I get to the end of the record and don't know what I did while the record was going, I know it was a good record. And I've covered, these different parts, or, sometimes I cheat. I have a yardstick, so I go,
Sure.
just move my brush along. That's
Thank you.
Have you ever gone back to a record too many times and it no longer served?
You'll have to see my record collection. No.
And then to grab on to Carolyn's question regarding the differences, I mean, the compositional power or flow is driven by texture and value here. And as soon as you add hue, it becomes a different balance. And like these rectangles acquire a lot more power in this one because they're not nearly as apparent in the value only achromatic approach. And then you've got that river of the cool colors in the warm colors. Did those areas with the cool colors, did you always kind of have in the back of your head, even at this stage, oh, these will probably be cool colors through here? Because that's really the thread in that one, I would say, is those cool colors. It sounds like you don't agree, but that's all right.
No. I just hadn't noticed that, or I certainly hadn't thought of that. I'm more intuitive.
Okay.
This was probably 2 or 3 other colors before I added this color, and this, you can barely see, but there were some reds underneath, and it changed, and
In the underpainting being a warm color, it wasn't simply to activate a cool color that you had planned to put there, but at some point you decided this needs to be cool.
yeah.
And Was that an intuition you feel like you were born with or that you developed?
I'm really pleased that you noticed these white spots.
I'm pleased that you're pleased that I noticed those things.
Because I sort of like to leave little blanc spots. I'm a trained serious artist, so
Right.
I'm not sure if they're tertiary or which combination.
Yeah.
I also am part Scots, so I try to use up my tubes of paint. So I start the paintings with the colors that I really don't like and I want to get rid of. So whip out all that
For
purple
sure.
or orange or green or whatever color. I don't typically use a lot of blues. So the blues they're a little frightening for me.
Interesting.
But I guess there are some blues. I just have a hell of a good time. I have fun. I mean, I am very, very blessed and fortunate. Marilee supports what I do, and we've built a studio next to our house, and that wasn't big enough for my habit, so we bought a building on the highway after we sold our business, and she's afraid I'm going to fill that up, and it's just it's been just a wonderful ride. You know, I mean, the people that have been friends, people that I've met.
Has it always been fun?
Yeah, I think so.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I got a bit of angst, but you know, I try not to let it show.
Yeah.
Do you paint for yourself? Do you have that voice ever, or do you just free paint for yourself? What pleases you?
I paint for myself.
That's cool.
Yeah, I'm not going to admit that I hear voices. I mean, really? Oh yeah. Do you see that?
We've got
No,
a car right out here.
The white one? Yeah. No, I've been blessed, and you know, we had a store, so we made an income. I would work before I went to work. I would work after I was done with work, but there was never any pressure to sell the work. I didn't feel like I had to make a pretty landscape that somebody would like, or a nice abstract painting that someone would like. So I've always been free to do this, you know, wherever it may lead. And I just, you know, keep reading, keep listening to records.
I had a question on composition, and I too noticed the three little white squares. But my question was, you have developed as an artist to where you can start and you can compositionally see where you need to change or where you're going, because that is the thing I admire the most about your paintings is your composition.
Well, thank you.
But do you ever, at this point, start upper left if you're right-handed, so you don't, and start making a composition and then just go, "Ugh, this is it," instead of having it 3 feet by 4 feet, it's going to be 2 feet by 3 feet, and just cut it off and say, this isn't working? Or do you keep working through until the eye that you've developed allows the composition to work itself out?
That's a great question. And I keep working through, and the example that I'll use is there was a horn player who was, legend has it, auditioning for Thelonious Monk, the jazz player. And Thelonious says, you know, you're obviously pretty good, you're auditioning for me. Now play it wrong and make it right. So that's kind of what happens, hopefully, with some of these. you'll go through and what do I have to do to make it right or fit?
And how is that process? Is it a long process? Do you have to walk away for a while and just
It-
kind of air out your brain and come back at it with fresh eyes, or?
It varies because sometimes it's instantaneous. You just go through and then I'll have something in the studio and I'll be looking at it and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I could do that to it. There we go. And there was something just recently that happened like that. It was, a step back and, oh, there's the next step. So I'm always kind of looking for the next step, feeling my way, perhaps a little too cautiously. That gets to being an artist and being a person. I think most of us live our lives way too cautiously. You talk to somebody who was in a near-death accident and they're still living. And you talk to somebody yesterday who seemingly was in great health and they're dead today. So I think we live our lives too cautiously. We need to, not jump in front of the bus, but jump out there and try things.
I actually had two questions. First one is, when you were doing this blue section, were you listening to Birth of the Cool or just?
Probably, help me, Coltrane, kind of blue? No.
That's Davis. Love Supreme?
No, the album. Anyway.
Yeah.
Next question.
The next question is, what's the time difference between when you did the drawing and then did the painting?
About a year.
Okay.
About a year, roughly, give or take. And I usually work on 2 or 3 things at the same time. Joni Mitchell.
Joni Mitchell, sure.
Blue. Yeah. Usually I'm working on 2 or 3 different things, and I like that because I sort of listen to them or look at them, and I see that today I can work on that. I know what I need to do, and then tomorrow this one will tell me, what it needs.
It seems like you somehow as an artist changed between the drawings and the paintings.
Yeah. Well, they're
And-
entirely different processes.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
And you're so much looser and freer, and I like both of them, but for the drawings, it's kind of,
Yeah.
like this, but then the painting.
So the drawings came about on the canvas, there's some that I sent you. So I would do the black paint outlines, and I could do 1 of those a day, 2 of those a day, big canvas. I mean, this is great. And my wife, Mary Lee, looked at it and thought, you're going through way too many canvases way too quickly. How about if you shaded all those in? So all of a sudden, a 1-day drawing on canvas becomes a 6-month odyssey of,
Well done, Mary Lee.
Dynamite. Thank you, David.
Well, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
We've been speaking with David Strom about his exhibition, Drawing to Painting, May I Have This Dance, on view now at the Hopkins Center for the Arts through October 21st. Thank you.
Thank you. That was fun.
Awesome.